Welcome to the Insights channel, where we're changing the world one video at a time. Tonight, I wanted to talk about men's lapels. So lapels on a suit or a um, blazer, dress jacket. And what I wanted to lay out here. Now, I've never read this anywhere. I've never read about men's lapels, but this is my observation, and they're valid insights, and you'll see what I mean when I demonstrate them. Um, but I don't know if anyone else has explained it this way or if anyone else has written anything about this. I don't even know the terminology used, but I'll show you. Um, to understand, there are many different men's lapels. So there, you've seen wide lapels, narrow lapels, um, lapels that have like a notch in them, lapels that are just smooth and straight. Um, and if we look at previous decades, like the 1930s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, we see changes in lapels. And I don't think we've seen before, they come, the trends come and go, they return, they're cyclical, right? In some ways, the trend we're in now, that these thin lapels, it's kind of related to what we saw in the 60s with narrow lapels, but there's an element that's different. So in some ways, we've never seen this before. But what I want to do is share my insights about what makes the lapels look good, and and apply those principles to kind of judge how aesthetically pleasing certain lapels are. So to lay out the basic principles, I wanted to use this photo of John F. Kennedy when he was about 21. Um, he's just arrived in New York in like 1938, his junior year of Harvard, September, from a trip he made over the summer to Europe. And this, in my opinion, this is one of the most perfect suits I've ever seen. So I wanted to use this to lay out the principles. Um, uh, but what we're going to be talking about here is the way that the lines of the lapel. What people basically do is they adjust the size of the lapel and the shape of the lapel in order to change or take advantage of the relationships between the various lines formed by the cut of the lapel and the rest of the suit and the rest of the body. Okay, so I think the more artful and more visually appealing, more attractive lapels that you see are the ones that use all the lines of a lapel and have intentional and adjust them, right? Engineer them so they have as many intentional relationships with the rest of the suit and the human body and face. Okay, and I'll lay out what I mean in a second. So what I want to do is show you the line. So we have these lines of the lapel, and you'll see if you look at the way this suit has been designed, if the implied continuation of the line goes right to the corner of the shoulder. So it's what you have here is the line of the shoulder intersecting with the outer line of the sleeve, and then the seam where the sleeve meets the body. It's very powerful to have lines intersecting at a single point like this. And what we've got here is four lines intersecting. Okay. And of course, the same applies to the other sleeve, the other side of the lapel, right? So that's one point. In a way, they've engineered the width of the lapel, okay, so that this line is pointing directly to that point where all these lines converge. From a composition standpoint, like if you looked at a painting, right, or a professional painting or drawing, a masterwork, you're going to see this sort of thing. You're going to see um, the elements of the composition arranged so that you have lines intersecting with the corners of the paintings. It makes it look more whole. and integrated. It's at an unconscious level. It's more satisfying to look at. And you'll see what artists do is they'll even have, if they might not have an explicit line like a physical object, they might have clouds that are arranged. So when you don't realize it, but they're forming a line that goes to the corner. So the other another big line here is when you have these notches in the lapel. Um, those have a direction too. There's an implied line. So you'll see this notch. Oops, I'm not good at drawing here, but this notch is directed toward the corner too. So that's another point of integration. So actually, if you add that over here, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines meeting, right at that one point. You also have this line of the lapel, which points up here. And when you look at this, they're converging like right at the chin. It's hard to see exactly because it's a short line, right? But there's an intersection at a key point. It's either like the Adam's apple or the chin, or it could even be like where the knot is on a tie, right? It's going up here somewhere. It's hard for me to see exactly with this size photo. But there's another example. Now, you, this is another very subtle unconscious thing. But if you look at this shape, okay, it's mirroring the lines of his smile as it goes up to his nose. That repetition at an unconscious level, you're perceiving that as being it's enhancing attractiveness because it unifies the picture, so it makes it more striking. When you repeat a shape like that, right, or mirror it, it strikes you unconsciously. The other thing I'm going to demonstrate this. It's not really true with this suit, okay? But when you look at these notches, you can see an implied line going this way and going this way. It's like an arrow pointing this way, right? I don't see a relationship in this particular suit with the direction of those notches. Um, yeah, I don't see it. But anyhow, you'll see in another suit I'm going to show you that notch, the direction it's pointing, is another way to create these implied lines that integrate it. The other thing want you to notice is that with this V shape um, created by these lapel lines, it's 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 formalizing the natural V shape. We often think about a man as having a V shape with his torso, right? That's what this is doing. It's basically formalizing that V shape, so it's enhancing the V shape. So that's a very masculine trait, right? And they're using the lapel at the same time to do that. So this is a very, in my opinion, a very artistic suit. There's a lot more I could get into, but I just want to focus on the lapel right now. So let's blow. Well, we're going to lose the lines I've drawn, but let's look at a blown up version of this so you can see a little bit better. So let me just quickly show you, with a closer photo without drawing the lines, what I was talking about. So here you can see this bottom edge of the lapel points right up to this corner, and it's meeting the line of the shoulder, the outer line of the sleeve or arm, and then the seam of the shoulder. You can also see this is pointing up here. So you've got 5 lines intersecting up here at a single point, which, as I explained, is it's from a composition standpoint, it's very powerful. It gives a feeling of satisfaction, resolution, unified, unity, cohesiveness in the design. I also mentioned in this notch, this line comes up and it seems to converge like right here in the center of the chin. Looks to me. It's hard to judge exactly, but I think it's like right here, this point. And I said that this shape is mirroring this shape, and it's the reverse of this shape on the man's smile. And in some ways, you can look at it as a broader continuation of the triangle of the nose. Let's see. I also explained that it they did a lot with this lapel, right? So they can't do everything, right? So in this case, they don't need to, right? Because they've got enough unity here. But you'll see in some other Another suit I'm going to show you, they use the notch, the implied line created by the notch as a way to integrate lines. So they'll use, you can think of this notch as an arrow, right, pointing in a certain direction. And you'll see in another suit that arrow points right to the shoulder. And I'll show you the reason why they did that. You can also see um, this notch. There's a negative line here coming in this direction that's implied by the midway point between these two, and that can be used too. So now let's move on to another suit. So this is the suit that Elvis wore in the final number of the '68 Comeback Special. It was designed by Bill Ballou, who was like a rock star clothing designer, costume designer to Hollywood at that time. And you'll see here, it's a double-breasted jacket, right? But it's got in some ways, a bigger lapel. It's kind of larger in some ways, right? And what you're going to notice here is because in John Kennedy's suit, like the lapel broke way down here, right? This suit, they wanted to button him up, right? They wanted it to be a little more formal, and so they wanted the lapels to meet higher up, closer to the neck. Because they did that, they had to have a wider angle on the lapel in order to get it to intersect with these lines. So you see that's what they did. So it's a wider angle, although it's a shorter lapel, it's a wider angle, and it goes up and it intersects with these points. I don't see any relationship with the notch other than, if these are probably designed to meet at a certain key point on Elvis's face. But to me, this is the most critical relationship. It's having the lines go to the implied lines intersect with the lines at the shoulder. So this is 59. Okay, so this is, I thought North by Northwest was early 60s. So it's right on the cusp of the 60s. And that's when in the 60s, men's suits took on more of a slighter profile, right? They weren't as boxy and they didn't try to look as baggy and beefy as they did in the 50s, 40s, 30s. And you can see the lapels became narrower. They wanted a narrow lapel. And one thing I noticed here is that, so the line does not obviously intersect. The line of the lapel doesn't intersect with the shoulder. But I noticed they angled in this suit the notch so that if you cut this angle in half, it creates an implied line to the shoulder, which is pretty crafty. So at an unconscious level, we perceive that projected line and it's the same effect. It's as satisfying to look at. And what you're going to see is I'm going to show you some suits where I'll show you one suit that doesn't have a notch, just a straight lapel tuxedo jacket. It's very dissatisfying to look at. And I don't know if you'll see it the same way, and then I'll show you a contemporary suit where there's no relation. They have a regular lapel with a notch in it, right? But it's not angled so anything intersects with the shoulder. This line doesn't. None of these lines do, and the implied angle doesn't, right? And to me, it's very dissatisfying to look at after realizing this, after becoming aware of this, and seeing how great it looks in these other suits. So this is a tuxedo jacket, and you can see here, not all tuxedos have this kind of lapel, but many do. Some of them have traditional lapels, like we just looked at. But this is sort of a vertical. I would call it a vertical lapel. I'm sure there's some name for it, but it's vertical. It's curved, obviously. There are no straight lines, and it's not relating to or intersecting with the other elements of the suit in any way. And for that reason, I personally find it extremely dissatisfying to look at. Given that I'm now conscious of this dynamic, I couldn't wear it, and can't look at it. So, so, so anyhow, but you see my point, right? There's no relation to the other lines of the suit. It, I don't understand the aesthetic behind this, and I'd like to question the designer to find out what they had in mind here. But I don't see any sort of real aesthetic uh, to this lapel in terms of relating it and integrating it with the rest of the jacket. So, so this is the last example. This is a contemporary men's suit. This sort of design, has been, I think, in vogue for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. But you see here, you've got this narrow, it's the idea of a narrow lapel, and there's no relationship to the rest of the suit. Um, it's got a notch, this line in the notch is going up here, so maybe it's supposed to hit the center of the brow or something. I don't know. But anyhow, there's no relation to the shoulder, to the other lines of the suit, right? The notch, if you dissect it, it doesn't go to the shoulder line. This line doesn't, obviously. Um, so for that reason, like I said, to me, it's very uh, dissatisfying to look at. But that's my analysis of lapels. Those are the elements that I think. Wait, let me just, and it even like the V, for that reason too. Like the V doesn't really enhance his V figure. You know what I mean? The V is so vertical. It doesn't enhance the V shape of the male torso. So it's really not serving him. That might be why the shoulders look so narrow. I've noticed in a lot of contemporary men's suits that, I mean, their shoulders always look so narrow. It's like their thighs are wider than their shoulders. Uh, so anyhow, that's the analysis. If anyone has any reactions or comments, I'd love to hear them.